Next on Max TV, we take a look back at Ward Kessler and we preview Boxing After Dark, coming up on the next round. And welcome to the next round, brought to you by Everlast. Gabriel Montoya, Steve Kim, talking boxing once again, a jam-packed show. We begin round number one from the Oracle in Oakland, California. It was the continuation of the Super 6, and we have a new WBA Super Middleweight titleist, Andre S.O.G. Ward, with a technical decision in 11 rounds against the dethroned Mikhail Kessler, who drops to 42-1. Your scores, 97-93 and two scores of 98-92. Gabe, I tell you what, I'm eating crow, you're eating filet mignon. You ordered the upset special that never tasted so good. But I tell you what was a bigger upset than Andre Ward winning? Andre Ward dominating.
Yeah, I didn't think he would dominate like that. I thought he'd confuse Kessler for periods of time, but that Kessler would give him as good a fight as any. I thought Kessler would at least find a home for that right hand a few times in the fight, but he just seemed confused. His feet were like they were in cement. He didn't look good. I don't think he looked flat. I think a lot of it had to do with Andre Ward, giving him angles, going from southpaw to orthodox, and really, to me, if you didn't know anything about boxing and you sat somebody down and said this is a title fight, they would have assumed that Andre Ward, just on demeanor alone, was the champion, and Kessler was the guy challenging. He came in, he asserted himself, and he really took charge. And I think, people talk about the headbutts in the fight. Yeah. I think a lot of that was his demeanor, that he was going to take this space, and if Kessler wanted any part of it, he was going to have to pay the price.
I think that's a very ancillary issue. Kali Solomon can complain all he wants about the judging, the officiating, the headbutts, the holding. At the end of the day, your guy basically got blanked. I found it very hard to give Kessler a round. Quickness, speed, agility, and you talked about this. Kessler looked like he was in slow motion underwater. Well, Andre Ward, we always knew he was quick, but I thought his control of the ring was outstanding. Yeah. And they did a very simple thing to neutralize Kessler's jab, which was his main strength. They beat him to the jab. They beat him to the jab constantly with the straight jab, the up jab, a lot of movement. And when Andre Ward let his hands go, I thought when they got into exchanges, Andre Ward was punching offensively, Kessler was punching defensively, and there's a huge difference, and he never got on track to the use of feints and movement. Yeah. Kessler never was able to find Andre Ward, and the book is now out on Kessler. You give him any type of movement, you make him reset his feet, he's going to have a lot of problems.
Yeah, a lot of problems. I think it was, it's something that I talked with a prominent boxing manager just recently. And he said a lot of the European fighters, they're not used to the American style of boxing, particularly, a black guy from the inner city. It's got a totally different rhythm than, most of the European fighters that they face. They're using feints a lot. Andre used a lot of almost like Bernard Hopkins-like tactics where he would kind of, grab him and then work on the inside. And it was very rough with Kessler, which we didn't expect. He's always thought of as more of a finesse fighter, Ward is. And in this fight, he pulled out all the stops, and it really confused Kessler. It kept him off his game, and he would change tactics before Kessler would ever adjust to the one he was using. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and also the switch hitting. I'm not a big fan of switch hitting, but this guy here was like Eddie Murray or Mickey Mantle. He was very effective from both left-handed and right-handed stance. And you talk about the infighting. Teddy Atlas always says it takes two to tango. Yeah. And guys like Kessler can complain about the holding, but you know what? You have to comply with that guy holding. Nothing is holding you back from working free and letting your hands go. And I remember there was an exchange between Jack Reese and the corner of Kessler where Jack Reese said, if you're on the inside, you're allowed to work. I will let you work your way free. And you know what? Andre Ward on the inside was working his way free, and he was taking advantage of it. And I thought he was just a better-looking athlete. I thought he was much faster. I thought he was not as big, but you know what? Quick twitch muscle fiber. Yeah. Kessler looked very, very labored and forced in his movement. He simply did not have the reflexes. And Andre Ward, it felt to me like he was thinking 2-3 steps ahead. Always. Well, it seemed like Kessler was a step behind the whole evening.
Yeah, it came down to almost game plans. It seemed like Kessler maybe, I don't think he took Ward lightly, but I think he felt, well, I've got a guy with only 13 KOs in 20 fights. He probably doesn't hit that hard, and he's more of a, a finesse-type fighter. So I should be able to tough this out and wear him down the stretch. And it just wasn't true. I mean, Andre fought at such a ferocious pace throughout the fight, and he kept it up for all 12. I don't even recall him really taking a round off or taking a break. He fought all the way through, and I think Kessler kept waiting for his moment, and by the time we got midway through the fight, it was too late.
Yeah, Andre Ward was like that rabbit in the marathons, and usually those guys fade out after about 3-4 laps. or 3-4 miles, he kept going, and he kept strengthening the pace. And I thought early on, he really stunned Kessler with a couple of right hands, and he kept up the pace. I think Kessler had this shock look on his face. He wasn't going to win a decision in Oakland. I'll say this, Andre Ward, I think, is the American hope in this tournament. Andre Durrell is talented, yet he's not willing to stay on the inside and hang in the pocket as long as Andre Ward was. I think Andre Ward and Arthur Abraham, if I'm an odds maker, which I'm not, I'd say those two guys right now, based on what I've seen through the first stage of the Super 6, those are the odds-on favorites as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. I mean, coming into the thing, I said Andre was my dark horse. I thought he could get to that final round, and Abraham was my favorite. And now, he's not a dark horse anymore. He's definitely, he's 2 to Abraham's 1. I still will give Abraham, I'll lean towards him a little bit based on his power, his terrific defense, and his experience. But Ward is right there, and he really shows threat to everybody there. I mean, you compare him to Andre Durrell, they're both, the athletic, speedy guys in the tournament, and they both switch hit. They've got some similarities, but Ward's game is much more crafty. There's actually a game plan going on. He seems to have a beginning, middle, and end. And what I really liked was that he changed up his punches. Like you said, he threw the up jab, he threw the regular jab. Sometimes it was hard, sometimes it was just kind of pity-pat. He changed up everything that he did throughout the fight, and you can't really look at the fight and say, okay, well, this is the one thing he does, and let me try to negate that, because he's got so many tools. Yeah, he's definitely, in my book, a favorite.
Looking ahead here, he has to fight Jermaine Taylor, and we're going to assume, since Jermaine Taylor made the announcement on his Twitter page that he is going to stay in this tournament and continue his career, I don't know if he knocks out Jermaine Taylor, but I get the sense it's a pretty easy fight. I could be wrong. One thing, forget the physical part of it or the neurological damage Taylor might have, boxing IQ. I always get the sense that Andre Durrell is in the honors class, and you take a look at Jermaine Taylor, he never really got out of elementary school when it came to basic boxing.
No, he's kind of had some remedial, classes going on.
ESL.
He's changed trainers. He doesn't quite know who he is after all this time. And Ward, Dan Goosen and Virgil Hunter, Ward's trainer, they've been saying all along that we're kind of slowly building him. We're building him the right way. And people, as much as they complain, it turns out Goosen and them were right.
Well, that's another point, though. You take a look at Jermaine Taylor, fast-tracked by HBO, and I thought he skipped at least 2 or 3 steps in his process.
Absolutely.
From this level to Bernard Hopkins, I don't think he won either fight, and it seemed to permanently stunt his growth. Well, you take a look at Andre Ward, and I talked about this with him yesterday. He said, Steve, my pro debut was on HBO, and then I was hidden. And through all the struggles against Kenny Costa, where he was buzzed badly, Darnell Boone knocked him down, then everyone jumped off the bandwagon. Everyone, guys like me, calling him Hospital Ward. But when it was all said and done, they developed and they crafted and they cultivated a fighter, and it came together this past weekend.
Yeah.
Really a brilliant job of building a fighter.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, hindsight, I guess, is 20/20. But absolutely, he slowly progressed. They picked fighters, and they took the criticism and said, look, this is what we're building towards, and the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, and also a lot of the credit has to go to Andre Ward. A lot of fighters that come out with that type of signing bonus. He's the lone gold medalist in I think 2 or 3 Olympics we've had.
Yeah.
A lot of guys would get antsy, they'd get impatient, and they would force you to make a fight. Andre Ward listened to the adults, and now I think he really is coming into his own as a real blue-chip professional fighter.
Absolutely. Jumping back to the Taylor fight, I think it's a really dangerous fight for Taylor because Ward, he hits solid, but he's not a one-punch knockout guy, maybe not even a 3-punch knockout guy. And so Taylor, I think, is going to get outboxed all night. And not only that, but he's going to get hit and drilled all night long, with solid shots. I think that could be as dangerous, more dangerous than anything else.
The thing about Andre Ward, not only is he slick crafty, he also hits you with blind shots. And I'm not so sure Jermaine Taylor, who's faced a pretty good amount of styles, has ever faced a guy with the speed and quickness.
No.
Along with the athleticism of an Andre Ward, and I believe that fight's going to take place in March. And I agree, I'm actually surprised that Jermaine Taylor is going on in this tournament.
Yeah.
But I think to just kind of wrap this up, 2 guys that really captured our attention in the Super 6 has to be Andre Ward, Arthur Abraham, and the one guy that's really disappointed has to be Mikkel Kessler, because at the very most, if you are even from Denmark and you were paid by Sauerland, you could not have given this guy more than 2 or 3 rounds. He really got neutralized the whole night.
I actually ran into 4 guys from Denmark out in Hollywood the night of the fight, and they couldn't even give him a round. They were bummed. They were all hyped before the fight, and then afterwards are like, our guy just didn't even show up. And you got to take a guy that was basically the favorite in this fight. Everybody thought that he had the style that
was mine.
Yeah, that would beat Arthur Abraham. And boy, has his stock dropped.
But looking ahead, he has to fight Carl Froch, and I'll say this: I think that's a much better much more pleasing style from Mikkel Kessler. Froch is a guy that's going to be there.
Yeah.
He's not very slick. He's not very athletic. He has a good right hand. He's going to be there. And if you take a look at the history of Mikkel Kessler, when he racked up those 10 defenses as the WBA super middleweight champion, most of those guys were very simple to figure out. Very much unlike an Andre Ward. I expect him to beat Carl Froch, though, believe it or not.
I do as well. You know, and I think you could even stop him. I mean, he's going to be there. He's got terrible defense. He can be hit. He's a little bit of quicksand in that you think, you know, he's so easy to hit that you really think you're getting a little further than you are at that point. I think he's kind of a long-haul knockout. But I think Kessler has the perfect get-back opponent in front of him in Froch.
Well, there it is. That is the continuation. Round 1 of the Super 6. We come back. We have a little Thanksgiving boxing after dark. And we are back on the next round, brought to you by Everlast, Gabe Montoya, Steve Kim talking boxing. Round number 2. We go to Quebec City, Quebec, Canada, where it's boxing after dark, Thanksgiving style. Yes, this is leftovers. IBF super middleweight title is on the line. A rematch, Lucien Boutte takes on Librado Andrade. And for the vacant IBF lightweight title, Ali Funica takes on Joan Guzman. Here's the thing. If you take away the last minute of the first fight, didn't Lucien Boutte totally dominate this first fight?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's almost, yeah, if you take away that last minute, there's absolutely no reason for a rematch in this fight. But, you know, fortunately, you know, for Andrade, he's like a Mexican monster movie, man. You could kill him, you could hit him with the bat, run him over with a car. He's still going to keep coming. And, you know, he got thoroughly outboxed in the fight. He got hit with a lot of flush shots, and yet he was still there at the end. And he's a guy that believes in his chin, believes in his power and his toughness, and he's going to still be a problem because he's learning how to box just enough to get in there and land his big shots.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to talk about what happened last October when Marlon B. Wrong absolutely was 2-on-1 in there. He's the house judge for that promoter and Lucien Boutte. There's no doubt that he gave a long count. Not saying that Boutte couldn't have got up, because remember, it was the very end of the fight.
Right.
All he had to do was get on his feet. He didn't have to fight one more second. Here's the thing. Everyone's saying Librado Andrade's got to start faster. Here's the problem. That's like asking somebody to run faster than they are. You're going to run the way you run, and you're going to fight the way you fight. Lucien Boutte, I would figure, based on his own mind psychologically, he's going to be in even better shape, or at least work harder than he did the first fight, knowing what happened. And Lucien Boutte is going to box. He has advantages in foot speed and hand speed. He's still the home fighter. Librado Andrade, if he could start faster, he would have been doing so his whole career. So I'm not really sure anything changes outside of, if this fight were a 15-round fight, I think Librado Andrade could win this rematch. However, I think this fight's a little bit tighter. I think there'll be a little bit more pressure early on for Andrade. But I don't get the sense he's going to win on points in Quebec.
No, it's not like the first fight was like Floyd Mayweather versus Jose Luis Castillo, where it was a really tough, grinded-out fight that could have gone either way, although everybody thinks, you know, Castillo won. This one was a guy getting outboxed for, you know, 11 rounds and 2 minutes, and then coming on in the last minute. I mean, he was there pressuring the whole time, but he was not effective. I expect, you know, Boutte to box from the outside and maybe, you know, meet out his energy a little bit more so that he saves something for the last rounds. But I expect him to win handily.
Handily? You know, I think this fight will be a little more competitive, though. I think that Librado Andrade is going to have to do something to try to land a little bit more leather on the inside. Go downstairs a little earlier.
Yeah.
But you're right. You are what you are. And this whole thing about Librado Andrade needing to start faster, you know, that's like saying if I was 7 feet tall, I'd be Yao Ming. You know what the problem is? I'm 6'1.5". It simply is not going to happen.
He's not going to be doing the shoulder roll.
And I would like to see psychologically, does Lucien Boutte tighten up? In these situations, we don't know how a fighter's going to react to the most harrowing situation of his professional career. He was hurt very badly at the end of that 12th round.
And you know, really, like, yeah, all he had to do was get up, but you also have to show that you're able to continue. And he was not, because Marlon B. Wrong, you know, it took so long trying to keep Andrade in the corner. You know, he had behind him a guy that was absolutely out on his feet.
I tell you what the most egregious part. He started the count and then looked back and then pushed Librado back basically to the neutral corner in the middle of the count.
Yeah.
It's almost like in the WWE when Classy Freddie Blassie or Bobby the Brain Heenan would bring in their own paid-off ref that was suspiciously on one side.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to say I don't think Marlon B. Wrong, which the actual name is right, is going to be involved in this fight, thankfully. So the undercard, Ali Funica versus Joan Guzman for one of the vacant IBF lightweight belts. Interesting fight. I think Joan Guzman is that much better. I think he's shifter, faster, quicker, more talented. Here's the problem. Rust don't sleep. I think that's a huge factor here.
I think it's a huge factor. He hasn't fought since last year. You know, Funica has been on the shelf since his first big fight against Nate Campbell earlier this year, too. So I think rust for both guys is going to be there. But my problem with Guzman is that as he's moved up, yeah, he's slick. He's good in the early rounds, but the offense disappears as the fight goes on. And with Funica, he's a pressure guy. We got a 6'1" fighter in Funica versus a 5'7" fighter in Joan Guzman. And I think he can afford to be a little more economical, just work behind the jab, work in his power shots behind that, and basically keep Guzman at a distance and win the fight.
Well, here's the thing. I call him the opposite of Manny Pacquiao, Joan Guzman. I remember him at 122. He was busting through people.
Oh, yeah.
He was like an LAPD batter ram through a crack house. All of a sudden, he moves up in weight. Boring.
Yeah.
I mean, really boring. Boring to a point where you say slick, I say death. And here's the thing, though. I think Guzman is the more talented guy. And here's the thing. This is 2 days after Thanksgiving. For a guy that had problems making weight, uh-oh. Yeah. Uh-oh. Yeah. Let's make sure this fight goes off. Let's make sure on Friday afternoon he could tip the scales at 135. I want to make a prediction. If he makes the weight effectively, I think he wins the fight on movement. That's what I think. Who do you like, Gabe?
I'm going with Ali Funica. I think he's a big enough guy that, Guzman's shifty and he moves around the ring really well, but when you got a guy that's 6'1", he doesn't have to move far to cut off the ring. And I think he did it pretty well against Nate Campbell, a fight that I thought it could have gone either way, although he did get knocked down. I don't think there's any chance of him getting knocked down in this fight, though.
Well, here's the thing about Ali Funica. Not only is he tall, lanky, active.
Yeah, he's
very
active.
busy. He's going to make Joan Guzman fight. Unless Guzman wants to walk around the perimeter of the ring all night, this might be a pretty good fight. It might be.
And it's not like he hasn't been in with crafty guys before. He held his own with Nate Campbell very well. Yeah. It's a fight that should have been rematched.
Blew out Zahir Rahim.
Yeah, and he blew out Zahir Rahim, a guy that, you want to talk about ugly or death. Yeah. I mean, that guy, he's got it tattooed on his chest. He's horrible. But, so Funica is not an inexperienced guy. I don't think, I don't know what the odds are on this fight, but to me, I think it's his fight to lose.
All right, so there you have it. Boxing After Dark, Thanksgiving style in Quebec. We come back, we wrap it up with news and notes. And we wrap things up here on the next round, brought to you by Everlast. We go to the Fight Review Saturday. Championship Saturday, indeed, from Mexico, WBC Junior Flyweight title changes hand. Rodel Mayol, TKO in 2 over defending champion Edgar Sosa. Another part of Mexico, WBA Mini Flyweight champion Giovanni Segura blows out Sonny Boy Jarro in 1. Then in Canada, Marvin Sonsana and Alejandro Hernandez fight to a 12-round draw. Some controversy there we'll get to. And for the WBA Interim Junior Welterweight title, Marcos Maidana, don't cry for me, Argentina, knocks out William Gonzalez in 3. There's some controversy here. I saw Mayol Sosa, and here's the thing. There was a Coco Beware-like headbutt. I think that severely affected Edgar Sosa. And then later on, obviously, he's still dazed. He gets knocked out. Here's what I think. You give the title to Mayol, but if you're the WBC, you mandate a rematch. I think that's the right thing.
You absolutely have to. I mean, it was very similar to the Torres-Holt rematch, where the headbutt kind of turned the fight. And then, the guy capitalized. And granted, you got to do what you got to do with the guy in front of you. But, the WBC, can ban Shane Mosley, until he apologizes to them or make Chris Arreola, talk about getting a guy to go against his nature, tell Chris Arreola to stop swearing. Then they've got to do the right thing with this fight and make the rematch, mandate the rematch. It has to happen.
Yeah, Chris Arreola would say about this WTF, and this is a kid's show, so I'll leave it at that. Giovanni Segura, I'll say one thing about him. He has no skills, no tools, no fundamental grounding, but, boy, he could throw rocks. My God, he's a heavy-handed bastard, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just... Somebody's got to check those raps, because, geez, I mean, he's got
he does work with Capetillo. Let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not even go there. But, yeah, the man can punch. The man cannot box. He's all action. He's great TV.
Boy, what a way to start your historic title run and be the next Pacquiao by not making weight. Marvin Sonsana, I'm sorry. I don't know. It's one thing if a guy makes millions of dollars and they can afford to be complacent and they've achieved something. What is Sonsana's excuse?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a rising contender, you're supposed to be young and hungry, but, not that hungry. I don't understand it. Lose it on the scales at the beginning. And there was a lot of buzz around this guy, but, we'll see. The bloom is off the rose a little bit.
Yeah, and because of that, the WBO 115-pound title is now vacated. I believe there might be a rematch. I'm not sure how that works, but I talked to a couple people. They believe Hernandez may have actually won this fight. I'll be getting a DVD later this week. And Marcos Maidana, good to see him staying busy. Say what you want about him. He could bang, he could punch. I think it's an exciting guy. At 140 for a long time, I think he'll always be in the mix.
Well, this is a guy, again, HBO dropping the ball. Earlier in the year we had Kermit Cintron beating Alfred Angulo, and then he goes and fights off TV in Puerto Rico. He doesn't get another TV date. Meanwhile, we get to watch Angulo rebuild on TV. In this fight, Marcos Maidana was in one of the most exciting fights of the year. It's a Fight of the Year candidate, and we don't get to see him again. I don't understand why.
Well, because it's very simple. You take a look at Ortiz. He was ordained by HBO, and he was really the guy that Golden Boy wanted to win. Now, Golden Boy, I believe, has the American rights to Maidana.
He does, yeah.
But Victor Ortiz is really their guy, and that's why you're going to see him December 12th against Antonio Diaz. Taking a look at what's coming up here this weekend, there's other boxing on Showtime, another edition of Showbox, lightweights in action. Johnny Molina takes on Martin Onario, and then junior featherweight showdown, Rico Ramos takes on Alejandro Perez. I tell you what, I like this show. You take a look at Johnny Molina. I think, to me, he's another guy that, like Joe Goosen had before in the past, Rafael Ruelas. Tall, lanky guy. Everyone thinks he should box from the outside. Not really. He's going to get exposed on the outside. But if you bring him the right amount of guys that can stay right with them, going to go chest to chest, he's going to make for some very good fights. I think Onario is the exact perfect guy you want to face right now.
Yeah, he's a tough guy. He's going to come forward, but he's got a good chin. He's got experience. He's going to push John Molina a lot further than the last few guys that he's faced. And Molina, since he's moved over with Goosen, he started out as a rangy fighter. Now he's moved on to be more of an inside fighter, and I think that's perfect for his game because he's got a really big frame for 135 pounds. He's a guy that he could stay on the outside, but right now I think he's going to be overpowering people. He's got power in both hands, and he knows how to use it. And that inside defense and the inside offense, more importantly, are getting better every time out.
Well, from the outside, he's kind of like a Margarito Ruelas or Chico Corrales. They get exposed. No matter how they're built, it's actually counterintuitive to the way they should fight.
Yeah.
And you take a look at when he's on the inside, chest to chest, it actually gives him a little bit of shelter. So it's almost something like it's the opposite. Sometimes you think being far from a guy is safe. Not for these guys. These guys need to be closer to the inside, be able to feel and touch their opponents. Martin Onario take away one fight where Robert Guerrero blasted him with the left hand or two.
Yeah.
He's been a durable, steady, tough, hard-nosed guy. Still the only guy to beat Steven Luevano. So this guy's a pretty good track record. I know he's moving up, but I don't think size is a factor here. This guy is a big, strong guy. And Rico Ramos, Alejandro Perez, I think is a fight between two good, hungry young fighters.
Yeah.
Alejandro Perez is a guy we see at Wild Card all the time. One of the hardest working young fighters we'll ever see.
Yeah, I get tired just watching him work out. I mean, the guy, he's consistent. He shows up 10 a.m. every day. He works out for 2-3 hours. He's just kind of a workhorse type guy. I think movement's going to give him a lot of problems. Fortunately for him, Ramos is not a movement guy. Yeah. He's more of a volume, kind of like a tiny Margarito type. You come near him and he's going to bang you to the body. He's going to work upstairs. It's not a lot of special effects or anything, but he gets the job done. I'm looking for him to win this fight.
Yeah, Perez is one of those guys has to be in great condition because he's a grinder and he's a guy that'll pitch and he will also catch. I'm looking forward to this. I think the guy who wins this fight really does take a good step in becoming a young contender, perhaps on the periphery of getting a ranking. Taking a look at some tidbits as we wrap it up, the numbers are in, at least preliminarily. Manny Pacquiao, Miguel Cotto pay-per-view gets 1.25 million subscribers, netting around $70 million. And also, Israel Vasquez, Rafael Marquez 4, looks like this will take place February 27th at the Staples Center. Pacquiao, Cotto, I think it's amazing that you got two guys who don't speak English, who never really did huge numbers as the A side, busting out to 1.25. I think it's clear. I think Manny Pacquiao right now, his momentum is greater than any fighter in the game today. I think he's the most important boxer in the sport. I really do.
Yeah, I think, the big thing is that when he steps up, he stepped up to fight Cotto, it was a catch weight and this and that, but, he keeps raising his game every time. And not only that, when he does step up to the plate, he delivers. The fights are always exciting. And I think that's the main selling point here is that everybody knew that these two styles would mesh beautifully, that it would be a great fight. And undercard be damned, it was. And that's the difference between him and Floyd. Like you say, he's got great momentum going, whereas Floyd doesn't really, not a lot of people are talking about Floyd other than, is he going to fight Manny Pacquiao? Whereas Pacquiao, I think people would pay to see him fight anybody at this point.
Here's the thing. My article today, Less is More, and I made a mistake. There's actually been 3 major pay-per-views, not 2. Hatton Pacquiao was so short, I forgot about it, obviously. But here's the thing. That one did 800,000. Mayweather Marquez did $1 million, and this one did 1.25. I think the whole point is if you make pay-per-views and you raise the bar back up to where it should be, instead of having a pay-per-view every 6 to 8 weeks like we've had the last 3-4 years where the numbers really went down across the board, and I think fans got used to not paying for them. I think there was a backlash. They said, you know what, we already pay $100 for cable a month. I'm not paying another $50 every single month for fights like Zab Judah and Shane Mosley, which were eventually postponed. Winky Wright, Bernard Hopkins. I think if you want to maximize the exposure of these fighters, it's not to get back on network TV. That's not going to happen. But you got to have most of your fights that belong on HBO and Showtime, and not pay-per-view. Because simply, you take a look at the roster fights the last 4, 5, 6 years. Too many HBO-level fights, we were paying $54.95.
And all those were good fights that could have pulled in casual fans.
Yeah.
You could have invited your buddy over and said, hey, there's a good fight this Saturday. You should check it out. But when you add in, oh, yeah, it's going to cost you like $5-10 if you come over because I'm paying $50 for a pay-per-view, it kind of kills it. And what this does is it makes those fights special again. You know? Hatton-Pacquiao was a special fight, you know. Floyd Marquez, not so much. But, you know, Pacquiao and Cotto was a special fight. It should be pay-per-view. It should be building up to a big fight like that, like a Super Bowl or something.
You know, I don't think fans, and we're still fans no matter what we do, we don't have a problem paying for fights that are legitimate pay-per-view events like Leonard Hearns back in the day on TV or Select. But when this thing had become so watered down, it had become such a lowered bar. Like I said, Vern Troyer could have Fosbury flopped over it. I think that people began to say, why am I doing this? That business model may work for the UFC. And even the UFC is going through a bit of a plateau stage.
Yeah.
I think boxing's had a bit of a renaissance in two ways. Number one, less pay-per-view. Number two, I think both networks have had very strong years. And number three, guys like Andre Ward are being developed in their hometowns, and you're developing attractions locally. I think those things are infinitely more important than sanctioning bodies and having one champ. All that stuff is a bunch of nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think personally, I'd like to get down to more belts or find a way to streamline it because to me, you know, having all those belts is kind of like having all those pay-per-views. It gets a little watered down, and you can't quite tell which one is special. You know, who is the champion? Oh, this is the interim vacated, you know, champion Emeritus diamond belt. You know, that's a you know, issue for a whole other show. But yeah, to streamline it back the way it's going, to the local attractions, bringing fights back to Los Angeles, you know, to Houston and
Chicago,
Oakland.
New York.
Yeah, it's
real cities.
It's a beautiful thing, you know, and it takes the fights right back where it belongs, to the fans.
And you know what? I know people can disagree. Israel Vasquez, Rafael Marquez, these guys should only face each other. I'm sorry. I know you might disagree. I don't know how you feel about it. But here's the problem. These guys are each going to get about $700,000 to $800,000. To me, I know it's going to be a brutal fight, which is kind of the beauty of it. Yes, I am a savage beast. But it's going to be at the Staples Center. There's going to be a lot of Mexicans, a lot of boxing fans in general. Here's the thing. From a managerial standpoint, Gabe, even though this fight makes you squeamish, what do you want to do? Have either of these guys face Juan Ma Lopez for $250? It makes no sense.
No, it's an even fight at this point.
Right.
You know, they're both damaged goods, but you know the good thing is they damaged each other. You know, they're a great matchup for each other, and you know it makes me squeamish. I worry about, you know, the health of Vasquez's eyes, and I hear about Marquez being dizzy. But you know, if you're going to make a fight and they're going to make a fight. Yeah, it's an even fight. Two guys are damaged. They're going to come forward. It's going to be a beautiful thing.
It's like you're saying this is like a rhyme battle between Tupac and Biggie, two-shot guys.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. I said it. Yeah, I went there. So what? Anyway, I'd like to thank everyone that made this show possible. Everyone out there has a good Thanksgiving. And by the way, the next round this Wednesday, promise, Bert Sugar will be on. He promised me.
The main event.
The main event, yeah. He absolutely stiffed me. Well, his grandson got sick. I don't know where his priorities are. I mean, come on, Bert. That was terrible what you did. And we're also going to try to get Andre Ward on the show. So, until the next edition of The Next Round, till the next round, goodbye, everybody.